Following story is a translated and adapted conversation, recounting supernatural experiences from around the world. This content is intended for entertainment purposes only. Listen with an open mind and enjoy the thrill of the unknown. The content in this video is purely for entertainment. Viewer discretion is advised. If you are easily frightened, be prepared some stories might just send chills down your spine. If you're ready, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and immerse yourself in the world of the unexplained. The music in the forest, in the dense, uncharted forests of northeastern Thailand, there are tales whispered among the local stories of melodies drifting through the night air, haunting and beautiful, echoing between the ancient trees. They say the music calls out to those who dare to listen, luring them deeper into the woods, never to return. But legends are just stories, aren't they? Three friends, Nok, Wit, and Ake, decided to find out for themselves. Young and adventurous, they were seasoned hikers, always searching for the next thrill. When they heard about the mysterious music from the villagers, their curiosity burned brighter than their fear. "We have to hear it," Nok insisted, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "What if it's just some local festival?" Wit shrugged, adjusting his backpack. "Even if it's just a story, it's worth the trip. Who knows what we'll find out there?" Ake hesitated, glancing at the tree line. He had always been more cautious, more in tune with the warnings of the elders. But he couldn't resist the pull of adventure. "All right, but if we hear anything weird, we leave. No questions asked." They agreed, not knowing that those would be the last promises they'd ever make. The forest was alive with sound as they hiked deeper, birds calling, leaves rustling, insects buzzing in harmony. The air was thick with the scent of earth and blooming flowers, the sunlight filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. "This place is beautiful," Nok marveled, snapping pictures with her camera. "It doesn't feel haunted at all." Ake's shoulders relaxed. "See, it's just a forest. The villagers were probably trying to scare us." Wit laughed, his voice echoing. "If we hear any music, it's probably someone's radio." They set up camp near a clearing, the ground soft with moss. As evening approached, the forest grew quieter, the vibrant greens fading into shadows. They built a fire, cooking instant noodles and sharing ghost stories, laughter breaking the stillness of the night. But as the moon rose high, bathing the forest in silver light, the air grew cold. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their twisted branches reaching like skeletal fingers. And then they heard it. A haunting melody floated through the air, soft and mesmerizing. It was the sound of a kina, traditional Thai bamboo mouth organ playing a mournful tune. The notes danced between the trees, delicate and beautiful, but there was something unsettling about them, something wrong. Ake's face paled. That's not possible. "We're miles away from any village." Nok's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "It sounds so close." Wit stood, peering into the darkness. "Maybe someone's passing by. I'll go check it out." Ake grabbed his arm, his grip trembling. "No, don't. I've heard stories about this. They call it the Phaifong Wild, the ghost musician." Nok and Wit turned to him, faces pale. "What do you mean?" Ake's voice shook. "They say a long time ago, a musician was lost in these woods. He played his keen to guide himself back, but the spirits didn't want him to leave. They say he's still out there, playing for eternity, waiting for someone to take his place." The melody grew louder, closer, the notes twisting in the air, beautiful yet sorrowful. It was calling to them. Nok shivered, hugging herself. It's just a story, right?" Ake's eyes were wide with fear. "I don't know, but we shouldn't listen to it. Cover your ears, don't let it in." But it was too late. Wit took a step towards the trees, his eyes glazed over. "It's so beautiful, I have to see who's playing." Ake shouted, grabbing him. "No, don't follow it." But Wit's body was stiff, his face emotionless. I have to find him. He broke free from Ake's grip, stumbling towards the darkness, his footsteps unsteady as if he were in a trance. Nok screamed. Wit stopped, but he didn't look back. The music grew louder, the melody wrapping around him like a fog, leading him deeper into the shadows. Ake's heart pounded. "We have to stop him. If he reaches the source, he won't come back." Nok's face was pale, her hands trembling. "What do we do?" Ake's voice was hoarse. "We follow him before the music takes him away." They grabbed their flashlights, chasing after their friend as the melody echoed through the forest, haunting and beautiful, pulling them towards a darkness they could not see. Ake and Noak stumbled through the dense undergrowth, branches clawing at their clothes as they followed Wit's fading silhouette. The haunting melody wove through the trees, beautiful yet sickening, leading him deeper into the darkness. "Wit, stop!" Nock's voice was desperate, echoing through the forest, but Wit didn't respond. His movements were mechanical, his body swaying to the rhythm, feet dragging across the mossy ground. Ike grabbed Nock's arm, pulling her close. "Stay together. Whatever you do, don't listen to the music. Focus on something else." Noak nodded, her face pale. She pressed her hands over her ears, her heart pounding. But even then, the notes seemed to seep through, vibrating in her bones, whispering in her mind. A branch snapped ahead. Wit's figure disappeared behind a twisted tree trunk. "Wit!" Ake shouted, panic lacing his voice. He tightened his grip on Nock's hand, leading her forward. "We can't lose him." They hurried after him, the forest growing colder with each step. The air felt heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. Shadows danced along the trees, shifting and twisting, as if they were watching. Then they saw him standing at the edge of a clearing, his body motionless, head tilted as if entranced. In front of him, the fog curled along the ground, swirling like ghostly fingers. Ake's stomach dropped. The melody was clearer now, echoing from the center of the clearing, where a figure sat on a rock, playing the keen. The musician's form was shrouded in mist, his face obscured beneath a straw hat, tattered clothes fluttering in the breeze. The ancient keen in his hands looked worn, the bamboo pipe stained and cracked, yet the haunting notes flowed flawlessly, impossibly beautiful. Ake's blood ran cold. The figure wasn't human, it couldn't be. Nock's grip tightened on his arm. "Is that the ghost?" Ake swallowed, his voice trembling. "The Faifong Wild, the cursed musician." The ghost continued to play, the melody twisting in the air, sorrowful and mesmerizing. The fog thickened, swirling around Wit's feet, crawling up his legs. His face was blank, eyes vacant as the music pulled him closer to the figure. Ake's mind raced, the story his grandmother had told him echoing in his memory. Long ago, a musician was lost in this forest. He played his keen to find his way home, but the spirits were jealous of his talent. They cursed him, trapping his soul in the music for eternity. Now, he plays to lure others to take his place. Ake's heart pounded. If Wit reaches him, he'll never come back. Nock's eyes widened. "We have to stop him." But as they tried to move closer, the fog surged, cold and heavy, pushing them back. The music grew louder, the notes sharper, slicing through the air. Ake's knees buckled as a wave of dizziness washed over him. Noak stumbled, her vision blurring. "I can't move." The fog tightened around them, ghostly whispers echoing through the clearing, voices overlapping in mournful harmony. They could almost make out words pleading, crying, trapped in the melody. Ake's heart sank. Those are the lost souls, everyone who followed the music. The ghost's fingers danced across the keen, his head tilting as the tune changed, growing sweeter, more inviting. Wit took another step forward, his body shuddering as the fog wrapped around his chest, pulling him closer. Noak screamed, tears streaming down her face. "No, Wit, don't listen." But Wit's face was blank, his lips moving as if repeating the notes. His feet lifted off the ground, his body floating towards the ghost. Ake's chest tightened. No, this can't be happening. He clawed at the fog, his fingers passing through the mist as if it were smoke. "Wit, come back." But Wit didn't look back. His body was almost at the ghost's side, the music swirling around him, cocooning him in its haunting melody. The ghost turned his head slowly, his face still hidden beneath the straw hat, but Ake felt his eyes cold, hollow, watching them from the shadows. The fog around the clearing pulsed, the whispers growing louder, pleading, begging for escape. Nock's scream pierced the night. "Wit!" And then the music stopped. Wit's body fell to the ground, motionless. The fog swirled around him, dragging him towards the musician's feet. The ghost stood, his form flickering like a dying flame. He reached down, his hands stretching, bones visible beneath translucent skin. Ake's heart stopped. "No, please don't take him." The ghost's head tilted, the straw hat slipping back just enough for Ake to see his face, empty eye sockets, skin stretched tight over hollow cheeks, a mouth twisted in eternal sorrow. He picked up Wit's body, cradling him like a broken doll. The fog enveloped them, the whispers growing frantic, a cacophony of voices wailing as the ghost turned, carrying Wit into the mist. Ake screamed, rushing forward, but his body hit an invisible wall. The fog coiled around his arms, cold and heavy, forcing him to his knees. Noak collapsed beside him, sobbing uncontrollably. "No, Wit, please." The ghost's form faded, the fog dissolving into the trees, taking Wit with him. The whispers echoed one last time before the clearing went silent, the forest returning to its stillness, as if nothing had happened. Only the faint echo of the keen's melody lingered, haunting the air. Ake's hands shook as he pounded the ground. No, Noak curled into a ball, her body trembling. He's gone, he's really gone. The forest watched in silence, ancient and unmoved. The wind sighed through the branches, whispering a tune that would never end. The forest was suffocatingly silent. Ake's ears rang, haunted by the melody that had stolen his friend. He stared at the spot where Wit had vanished, the earth undisturbed, no trace left behind. Only the chill of the fog lingered, fading slowly into the trees. Nock's sobs broke the silence, raw and desperate. She clutched the ground as if it might anchor her to reality, her body shaking uncontrollably. Ake's throat tightened, his chest heavy with grief and guilt. He had promised they would be safe. We have to get out of here," Ake choked, forcing himself to stand. His legs wobbled, his body drained, but they couldn't stay. Not after what they had seen. "We need help, someone who knows what that thing was." Nock's eyes were hollow, her face pale as she looked up. "Wit, he's gone, Ake. He's really gone." Ake clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "No, I won't let it end like this. We'll find a way to get him back." Nock's lips trembled. "How?" That thing took him like he was nothing." Ake swallowed, his gaze hardening. "There's a village nearby. The old lady who told us about this forest. She knew something. She warned us about the music." Nock's eyes widened with a spark of hope. "You think she knows how to save him?" Ake nodded, his resolve solidifying. "If anyone knows about that ghost, it's her. We have to find her before it's too late." Noak wiped her tears, her body still shaking but determination flickering in her eyes. "Then let's go before the music starts again." They turned away from the clearing, the shadows watching them leave. The wind whispered through the branches, the faint echo of the keen lingering in the distance, waiting. The village was quiet, the small huts nestled at the edge of the forest. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold. Ake and Noak stumbled down the dirt path, exhausted but focused. They found her sitting outside her hut, weaving a basket from dried reeds. Her hair was white, eyes sharp despite her age, and her back hunched with years of knowledge and burden. She looked up as they approached, her expression knowing before they even spoke. "You heard the music, didn't you?" Nock's knees gave out, and she sank to the ground, her face pale. "Our friend Whitty followed the music and now he's gone." The old woman's face darkened, her hands stilling. "The Faifong Wild, the cursed musician." Ake stepped forward, desperation in his voice. "You warned us you knew about this. Please, tell us how to get him back." The woman's eyes were sad as she looked at them, her gaze heavy with sorrow. "Many have heard the music ... and many have been lost. Once the spirit takes them, they are trapped forever playing in his orchestra of souls." Nock's breath hitched, tears threatening to spill again. "No, there must be a way, something we can do." The old woman sighed, her shoulders sagging. The Faifong Wao was once a man, a brilliant musician who played his keen to guide lost travelers. But he was betrayed, his life taken by jealousy and greed. His spirit remained, vengeful and lonely, using his music to lure others into his curse. Ake's fists clenched. "How do we break the curse?" The woman hesitated, her eyes flickering with fear. "To free a soul from the Faifong Wao, someone must take their place. He plays to ease his suffering, to share his pain. Only by breaking the cycle of vengeance can the curse be lifted." Nock's face went pale. "Take his place." "You mean one of us has to stay behind?" The old woman nodded, her face solemn. "The spirits demand balance, a soul for a soul. Only then will the music stop." Ake's heart sank. He looked at Noak, her face stricken with horror. "There's no other way." The woman's eyes were sad. "The curse is powerful, ancient. It feeds on loss and longing. If you truly wish to save your friend, you must decide who will stay and who will leave. Nox's shoulders shook, a sob escaping her lips. I can't do this ... double quotes. Ake's stomach twisted, his chest tightening painfully. But he knew he had to save Wit, no matter the cost. He looked at the old woman, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. Tell us how to find him. Tell us how to end this. The old woman's eyes softened with pity. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a bundle wrapped in faded cloth. She handed it to Ake, her fingers trembling. Inside is a charm blessed with protection. It will guide you back to the clearing, but it won't shield you from the music. You must resist and make your choice before dawn, or the curse will claim you both. Ake took the charm, his fingers curling around it. Thank you for helping us. The old woman looked away, her face etched with sorrow. The spirits are cruel, they take without mercy. I pray you find the strength to do what must be done. Note buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Ake put his arm around her, holding her close as he whispered, We'll save him, I promise. But as the wind rustled through the trees, a faint melody echoed from the forest, haunting and beautiful, a reminder that the night was far from over. The night was eerily silent as Ake and Nook approached the clearing. The air was heavy, the trees looming like ancient sentinels, their shadows twisting in the moonlight. Ake gripped the protective charm tightly, feeling its warmth against his palm. But even its comfort couldn't ease the dread tightening around his heart. Nox's face was pale, her eyes hollow from exhaustion and fear. Yet, she followed closely, her resolve hardening with each step. They had to save Wit, no matter what it took. The clearing was just as they remembered, empty, desolate, and drenched in fog. But this time, the melody was waiting. It began softly, the mournful tune of the keen echoing through the trees. The notes curled through the air, hauntingly beautiful, a siren's call that pulled at their souls. Ake felt it wrap around his mind, whispering of peace, of surrender. His feet wavered, the world spinning, as the music clawed at his sanity. Nox's grip tightened on his arm. Don't listen. Remember the old woman's words, we have to resist. Ake gritted his teeth, shaking his head violently, forcing himself to focus. We need to find Wit before the dawn breaks. They moved deeper into the clearing, the fog swirling around their legs. Shadows danced at the edge of their vision, and the air grew colder, the temperature dropping with each step. And then they saw him. Wit stood motionless beneath a gnarled tree, his body rigid, his eyes glazed over. His lips moved silently, his face a mask of sorrow. Ake's chest tightened, a surge of relief and fear crashing over him. Wit, he ran to his friend, shaking his shoulders. Wit, wake up, we're here to take you home. But Wit didn't move. His body was cold, his eyes staring blankly ahead, unseeing. Nox's voice trembled. What's wrong with him? A low whisper drifted through the fog, a voice ancient and hollow. He is mine. A shadow coalesced before them, the mist curling and twisting until a figure emerged, a man draped in tattered robes, his face hidden beneath a shadowed hood. In his hands, he held the keen, its bamboo pipes worn and cracked. The Phi-Fon Wow, his head tilted, the darkness beneath his hood shifting as he looked at them. He heard my music, he followed willingly. He belongs to me now. Ake stepped forward, his jaw clenched. Take me instead. Let him go. Nook gasped, her eyes wide. No, Ake, don't. Ake's voice was steady, his gaze fixed on the spirit. You said it yourself, a soul for a soul. If I take his place, will you release him? The spirit was silent, the air growing colder as he considered. Then he spoke, his voice echoing through the clearing. One must always stay, the music demands it. If you choose to take his place, he will be free. Nox's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ake, please don't do this. Ake looked at her, his expression soft. I made a promise, I said we'd all go home together. When he has a future, you both do. But me, I have to do this. Nox's knees buckled, her sobs breaking the silence. No, this isn't fair, it's not right. Ake turned to the spirit, his shoulders squared. Let him go. Take me instead. The Phi-Fon Wow raised the keen, the ancient instrument gleaming beneath the moonlight. He began to play, the melody wrapping around Ake, filling his mind with shadows. The world faded, his body growing cold, his senses slipping away. He heard Nook scream, her voice distant, echoing as if from another world. The fog swallowed him, the music binding him to the clearing, to the curse. The last thing he saw was Wit's body collapsing, his eyes flickering back to life, his soul free at last. No carried Wit back to the village, his body weak but his soul his own. They both wept, grieving the friend who had saved them. But as they looked back at the forest, the fog curling between the trees, they heard it. The keen playing softly, a mournful melody drifting through the night. The music was beautiful, haunting and filled with sorrow. A shadow stood beneath the gnarled tree, its head bowed as it played, forever bound to the curse. Ake's figure lingered, his soul lost to the music, his sacrifice sealing his fate. No clutched the protective charm, her fingers trembling. "We'll never forget you, Ake." The forest echoed her words, the trees whispering softly as the melody played on, the spirit continuing his mournful tune until the dawn broke. The mysterious footprints. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy, casting dappled shadows over the campsite. The air was crisp, the chirping of birds echoing softly through the forest. It should have been a perfect morning, the kind that reminded them why they loved hiking. But when Toon stepped out of his tent, his blood ran cold. Around the campsite, circling their tents in chaotic patterns, were footprints massive, sunken deep into the earth. Each print was at least twice the size of a human foot, with long, claw-like impressions at the tips. Whatever made them was heavy, powerful, and unearthly. The campsite was nestled in a remote part of the Thai wilderness, far from civilization. They had hiked for hours, following a trail that twisted through ancient trees and rocky terrain. The place was beautiful, untouched, the perfect spot to escape the city's noise. The group consisted of four friends: Toon, the leader and experienced hiker; Nay, his girlfriend who loved nature photography; Jet, the easygoing joker of the group; and Pin, the quiet one with a fascination for local legends. That night, they had shared ghost stories around the campfire, laughing as Jet tried to scare them with tales of forest spirits. They fell asleep under the starry sky, feeling safe in the embrace of the ancient woods. But the morning was different. The forest felt darker, the air heavier. The trees loomed above them, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. And those footprints, they seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. Pin's face grew pale as she stared at the tracks. These they looked like the prints of the Nang Tani. May frowned. The what? The Nang Tani, a forest spirit. My grandmother used to tell me stories. She said they protect the deep woods, appearing as beautiful women to lure travelers away. But if angered, they show their true form. Massive creatures with claws that can tear through trees and people. Jed laughed, his voice strained. Come on, Pin. It's just an old wives' tale. Maybe a bear made these. Toon shook his head. There are no bears this big in Thailand. And look, the tracks, they're circling us, watching us. May's face paled. Did it come while we were sleeping? The realization sank in, cold and sharp. Whatever it was had been close, stalking them as they slept, its massive feet pressing deep into the earth, surrounding their tents. Toon began to follow the tracks, his heart pounding. The prints moved erratically, circling the camp before leading into the dense undergrowth. The forest grew darker as he traced their path, the trees pressing closer, their twisted limbs blocking out the light. May followed, her camera in hand, snapping photos of the prints. We need to document this, whatever it is. Jet tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. Maybe it's just a prank, some other hikers trying to scare us. But there were no other hikers. They were alone, miles from any village or trail. The footprints were impossibly large, the claws digging deep into the soil. No human could fake this. Pin's eyes were wide, her voice trembling. We should leave, my grandmother said those who angered the Nang Tani never return. Toon hesitated, his instinct urging him to protect his friends. But curiosity gnawed at him, the need to understand what they were dealing with. We can't leave yet, not until we know what we're up against. The air grew colder, the wind whispering through the leaves, carrying a faint sound, a distant wail, almost human, echoing through the trees. May shivered. Did you hear that? Jet's face was pale, his bravado gone. It had sounded like crying. Thun's jaw tightened. Stay close. Don't leave my sight. Whatever happens, don't answer it. Pin's voice was barely a whisper. They say the Nang Tani mimics voices to lure you away. The wailing grew louder, echoing through the forest, a haunting, mournful cry that wrapped around them, pulling at their minds. It sounded like a woman in pain, lost and calling for help. May's eyes filled with tears. We have to help her. Toon grabbed her arm. No, it's not real. It's trying to trick us. The footprints led deeper into the woods, vanishing into the shadows. The crying grew louder, echoing through the trees, closer, closer. And then the forest fell silent, to silent. No birds, no insects. Just the heavy, suffocating stillness. Jet's voice trembled. Guys, where did the tracks go? They looked down. The footprints had stopped, ending abruptly in the middle of the path. There were no signs of retreat, no trail leading away. It was as if whatever made them had vanished into thin air. May's voice shook. How is that possible? A low growl echoed through the trees, deep and guttural, vibrating through the ground. The shadows shifted, the air growing colder. Pin's face went white. It's here. The trees wrestled, the shadows twisting, forming a shape massive, hunched, with glowing eyes watching from the darkness. Thun's voice was steady, his body tense. Run. Don't look back. Just run. They bolted, the forest exploding around them, the creature's roar echoing through the trees, shaking the ground. Shadows twisted, branches snapped, and the footprints appeared again, chasing them, the earth trembling beneath their weight. The forest was alive with whispers, ancient and hungry. And the crying, the mournful wail followed them, echoing through the darkness. Their breaths were ragged, hearts pounding as they crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping against their faces. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees warping into twisted shapes, their gnarled limbs reaching out like skeletal fingers. Toon led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Behind him, May stumbled, Jet catching her arm before she could fall. Pin brought up the rear, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. The creature's roar echoed through the trees, deep and guttural, vibrating through the air. Shadows moved unnaturally, shifting and stretching, as if the darkness itself was alive. They could hear it behind them, the heavy, thudding footsteps, impossibly fast, shaking the ground with each step. The very earth seemed to tremble under its weight. Jet choked out, his voice breaking. What the hell is that thing? Pin's voice was barely a whisper. Nang Tani, it's real, it's real. May's eyes were wide with fear. It's just a legend, it can't be real. Thun's jaw was tight, his grip on the flashlight white-knuckled. It doesn't matter what it is, just keep running. They burst into a clearing, the moonlight spilling over the ground. For a moment, they thought they were safe, but then, the shadows began to move. From the tree line, a shape emerged, massive and hunched, its form shrouded in darkness. Eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, burning amber against the night. Its limbs were twisted, elongated, the claws sharp and gleaming. The creature stepped forward, its foot pressing deep into the earth, leaving behind one of the massive prints they had found around their tents. The same footprints that had circled them while they slept. May's voice was shaking. This can't be happening. The creature's head tilted, its eyes locking onto them. Then, it opened its mouth, and the mournful wail echoed through the clearing, wrapping around them, freezing them in place. It sounded human, like a woman crying, lost, pleading for help. Pin's hands covered her ears. Don't listen, it's trying to lure us in. The wailing grew louder, the shadows rippling as the creature stepped closer. Its body was unnaturally long, its limbs bending at odd angles, moving with a fluidity that defied logic. Thun's voice was steady, his body tense. Move, now. They ran, the creature's wail following them, echoing through the trees. It moved faster than anything they had ever seen, the shadows bending around it, distorting reality itself. The forest was a maze, the trees growing thicker, the paths twisting and turning. It was as if the woods were alive, shifting to trap them, to lead them back to the creature. Jet shouted, his voice cracking. We're going in circles. We can't get out, Thun's mind raced. We need to find higher ground somewhere it can't follow. Pin's eyes widened. The cliff. We passed it on the way, and it's not far from here. They veered left, crashing through the undergrowth. The creature's footsteps were right behind them, impossibly fast, the earth shaking with each step. The cliff loomed ahead, the rocky edge bathed in moonlight. They ran toward it, hearts pounding, the shadows clawing at their heels. They reached the edge, panting and gasping for air. The forest stretched out below them, the treetops swaying under the night sky. For a moment, they felt safe, but then, the creature stepped into the moonlight. Its body was twisted, elongated, limbs bending at unnatural angles. Its face was obscured, shrouded in darkness, but the eyes, those burning ember eyes, watched them, glowing with a predatory hunger. It moved forward, its foot pressing deep into the earth, leaving behind another massive print. The same prints that had surrounded their tents. The same prints that had followed them through the forest. The wailing began again, echoing across the cliff, a mournful cry that wrapped around them, pulling at their minds. It sounded like a woman crying, begging for help. May's eyes filled with tears. We have to help her. Toon grabbed her arm. No, it's a trick. It's using her voice. The creature's head tilted, its body shifting, limbs bending at unnatural angles. It stepped closer, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Jet's voice broke. What do we do now? The creature's mouth opened, and the wail grew louder, echoing across the cliff, vibrating through the air. The ground beneath their feet trembled, the rocks shifting. Pin's face was pale. The legend, it's protecting the forest, it doesn't want us here. Thun's eyes narrowed. Then we leave, now. The ground cracked, the rocks crumbling under the creature's weight. It stepped closer, its eyes locked onto them, glowing with a predatory hunger. There was no way down, no path back. The creature was between them and the forest. Thun's voice was steady, his resolve firm. We jump. May's eyes widened. What? It's the only way. We won't survive if we stay. The creature's body shifted, the shadows warping around it, limbs stretching toward them. The wail grew louder, echoing through the night. Toon took May's hand. Trust me. Jet looked at the drop, his face pale. This is insane. Pin's eyes were fixed on the creature. It's coming. The creature stepped forward, the ground cracking beneath its weight. The cliff edge crumbled, stones falling into the darkness below. Thun's voice was firm. On 3, 1 to 3, they jumped. The air rushed past them, the world spinning as they fell. The creature's wail echoed above, the shadows stretching toward them, clawing at the night. The last thing they heard before the darkness took them was the mournful cry echoing across the cliff, haunting and hollow. The fall seemed endless. The air whipped past them, the wind howling as the darkness swallowed them whole. Their screams were lost in the void, their bodies weightless as they plummeted into the unknown. Then, with a bone-jarring impact, they hit the ground. The world spun, pain radiating through their limbs as they struggled to breathe. The air was cold, damp, heavy with the scent of earth and decay. Toon groaned, pushing himself up, his body aching. The flashlight lay nearby, flickering weakly, its beam cutting through the thick, suffocating darkness. May was sprawled beside him, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. Jet was on his knees, coughing, his hands trembling. Pin lay a few feet away, unmoving. Thun's heart seized. Pin. He crawled to her, shaking her shoulder. Pin, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open, her voice weak. Toon. Relief flooded him, his shoulders sagging. Thank God, are you hurt? Pin winced, clutching her arm. I think it's sprained. May's voice was shaking. Where are we? They looked around, the flashlight's dim glow revealing crumbling stone walls, twisted roots hanging from the ceiling. They were in some sort of cavern, the air cold and stagnant. Jet's voice was hollow. We fell, but how did we survive? Thun's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. I don't know, but we're not safe yet. A distant wail echoed through the darkness, the mournful cry reverberating off the stone walls. It was the same sound they had heard on the cliff, the eerie, hollow voice of a woman lost crying. May's face went pale. No, it followed us. Pin's body trembled. We're underground, how can it be here? The shadows shifted, moving unnaturally along the walls, warping and bending as if alive. The air grew colder, the wail growing louder, closer. Toon gritted his teeth. We need to move, now. They stumbled through the cavern, the light flickering, shadows dancing around them. The walls were carved with strange symbols, ancient markings that seemed to writhe under the flashlight's beam. May ran her fingers over the carvings, her voice trembling. These are warnings, they're meant to keep something trapped here. Jet's eyes widened. Trapped or protected? The wail echoed again, closer this time, the shadows bending toward them. Thun's voice was firm. Keep moving. They stumbled deeper into the cavern, the air growing colder, the darkness pressing in on them. The walls narrowed. the path winding downward, spiraling into the earth. Pin's breathing was ragged, her injured arm hanging limply at her side. "I can't, my arm, it hurts." Toon wrapped his arm around her shoulders, helping her forward. "We'll get out of here, I promise." The wailing grew louder, echoing off the stone walls. It was no longer just a cry, it was a voice whispering, calling their names. May's eyes were wide with fear. It knows us." Jet's face was pale. How can it know who we are?" The shadows moved, a figure emerging from the darkness. It was humanoid, but twisted, elongated limbs bending at unnatural angles. Its face was shrouded in shadow, but the eyes, those burning amber eyes, glowed with a predatory hunger. It reached out, its fingers impossibly long, stretching toward them. The wail grew louder, the voice pleading, desperate. "Help me, please help me." Pin's body froze, her eyes filling with tears. "It sounds like my sister." May grabbed her arm. "No, it's not real. It's trying to trick you." The creature's head tilted, its body shifting, limbs contorting. It stepped closer, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Thun's voice was firm. "Run." They stumbled through the cavern, the creature's footsteps echoing behind them, impossibly fast, shaking the earth. The shadows stretched toward them, warping into twisted shapes, reaching out with skeletal fingers. The path spiraled downward, twisting and turning, the darkness growing thicker. The walls were covered in more carvings, the symbols glowing faintly, pulsing with an eerie light. Jet's voice was trembling. "These symbols, they're warnings, but they're also seals to keep it trapped here." May's eyes widened. "Then why is it chasing us?" Pin's voice was hollow. "Because we broke the seal when we jumped." The realization hit them like a blow. The cliff, the cavern, it was never an escape. It was a prison, and they had just set the creature free. The wail grew louder, the shadows twisting into faces, mouths open in silent screams. The creature's body distorted, limbs stretching, eyes burning with a ravenous hunger. It was no longer just a spirit, it was a curse. A darkness that had been trapped for centuries, waiting for someone to release it. Jet's face went pale. We set it free," Thun's jaw clenched. "Then we need to seal it again before it escapes this cavern." May's voice was shaking. How do we stop something like that?" Pin looked at the glowing symbols, her eyes wide with understanding. "The carvings, they're part of the seal, we need to restore them." The creature's roar shook the cavern, the shadows surging toward them. The walls cracked, stones crumbling, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Thun's voice was steady, his resolve unyielding. "Then we fight and we seal it, or we die trying." The creature's mouth opened, the wail growing louder, echoing through the darkness, vibrating through the stone walls. The shadows moved like liquid, flowing toward them, reaching out with clawed hands. They stood their ground, the flashlight flickering, the carvings glowing with a faint, pulsing light. The creature's eyes locked onto them, burning with an ancient rage. There was no escape, no way out, only the fight. The shadows surged forward, the creature's roar shaking the earth. The darkness closed in around them, cold and suffocating. They faced the monster, their backs against the ancient stone walls, the seal broken, the curse unleashed. And the fight for survival had only just begun. The cavern quaked, stones falling from the ceiling as the shadows surged forward, the creature's roar shaking the earth. Its elongated limbs twisted, claws gleaming, amber eyes burning with insatiable hunger. Toon tightened his grip on the flashlight, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "We need to restore the seal. It's the only way to stop it." May's hands trembled as she traced the ancient carvings on the wall. "The symbols, they're incomplete. It's like someone tried to break the seal before us." Jet's face was pale. What if it was never meant to be sealed? What if it was meant to escape? Pin winced, clutching her injured arm. "We don't have time to argue, it's coming." The shadows twisted, forming faces with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, their silent screams echoing through the cavern. The creature's body contorted, its limbs bending at unnatural angles as it moved closer, its voice a hollow, pleading whisper. "Help me, save me." May's eyes filled with tears. "It sounds so human." Thun's voice was firm. "It's not human. It's a monster. Don't let it trick you." The creature's head jerked, its eyes narrowing, its mouth stretching into an unnatural grin. It lunged, its body bending and warping as it charged toward them. Jet yelled, "Move." They scattered, diving away as the creature's claws sliced through the air, narrowly missing them. The walls trembled, stones crumbling, the ancient carvings flickering with a faint light. Pin's voice was urgent. The carvings, they react when it gets close. Thun's eyes widen. That's it. The carvings are the key. We need to make them glow to restore the seal. May's face was pale. But how? We don't even know what they mean. Jet's voice was steady. We don't have to understand them. We just need to activate them. The creature's roar echoed through the cavern, its limbs stretching, body distorting as it charged again. The shadows surged, skeletal hands reaching out, clawing at the air. Toon shouted, "Stay close to the walls, make the carvings glow." They pressed their hands against the stone, the ancient symbols pulsing with light under their touch. The air grew colder, the shadows recoiling, twisting away from the glowing carvings. Pin's voice was trembling. "It's working, it's actually working." The creature howled, its body contorting, limbs bending at grotesque angles. It slammed its claws into the ground, the cavern shaking violently. The walls cracked, the ancient symbols flickering, struggling to hold the light. Jet's eyes widened. "It's too strong, the seal won't hold." Thun's jaw tightened. "Then we strengthen it." He grabbed a rock, carving lines into the broken symbols, connecting them, restoring the patterns. The carvings glowed brighter, the light spreading across the walls, weaving a web of ancient symbols. May's voice was choked with fear. "It's coming." The creature's eyes burned with fury, its mouth opening impossibly wide, the wail echoing through the cavern, vibrating through the stone walls. The shadows surged, the air growing colder, suffocating. Pin screamed as the creature lunged, its claws slicing through the air, inches from her face. Toon threw himself between them, swinging the flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows. The light struck the creature, its body recoiling, limbs twisting as it let out a piercing scream. The shadows writhed, retreating from the light, the carvings glowing brighter. Thun's voice was fierce. "It's the light, it weakens it." Jet grabbed another flashlight, aiming the beam at the creature. "Take this, you monster." The light hit the creature's face, its amber eyes flickering, body twisting as it howled in agony. The shadows quivered, breaking apart, retreating into the darkness. May's voice was desperate. "We need more light, more power." Pin's eyes widened. "The carvings, they're reacting to the light. We need to connect all of them." They moved swiftly, aiming their flashlights at the carvings, the beams illuminating the ancient symbols. The light spread, connecting the patterns, the carvings glowing with a brilliant, golden light. The creature's body contorted, limbs twisting, face warping as it screamed. The shadows writhed, breaking apart, dissolving into nothingness. The carvings pulsed, the light growing brighter, blinding. The creature's body shook, its form shattering, the amber eyes flickering as its mouth opened in a final, piercing scream. Now I was trapped. Its body exploded into shadows, the darkness swirling, spiraling toward the carvings. The light consumed it, the shadows vanishing, the cavern shaking as the seal restored itself, the ancient symbols glowing with an ethereal light. The ground trembled, the walls cracking, stones falling as the cavern began to collapse. Toon shouted, "We need to get out, now." They ran, the ground shaking beneath their feet, stones crashing around them as the cavern crumbled. The light from the carvings guided their way, illuminating the path as they stumbled toward the exit. They burst into the open air, the sunlight blinding, the earth shaking as the ground beneath them collapsed. The entrance to the cavern caved in, sealing the ancient darkness once more. They fell to their knees, gasping for breath, bodies trembling. The forest was silent, the air warm, the shadows no longer watching. May's voice was a whisper. "It's over." Jet's face was pale. Did we really seal it?" Pin looked at the collapsed cavern, her eyes hollow. We set it free and we put it back." Thun's jaw tightened. "But at what cost?" They stood in silence, the weight of what they had witnessed pressing down on them. The ancient curse was sealed once more, but the darkness had tasted freedom. And curses have a way of returning. A cold wind blew through the trees, the leaves rustling softly. In the shadows, unseen, a pair of amber eyes watched, waiting. The mysterious lights. The air was thick with humidity, the dense foliage of the southern Thai rainforest forming a tangled canopy above. The sun's rays struggled to pierce through, casting a dim, greenish hue across the undergrowth. Cicadas chirped rhythmically, their song blending with the distant rush of a hidden waterfall. Four friends trudged along the narrow path, their laughter echoing softly through the trees. Mia, the adventurous leader, marched at the front, her braided hair swinging behind her. Close behind was Pat, her older brother, a skeptic who constantly scanned their surroundings. Dao followed, camera in hand, capturing every detail, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Trailing behind was Nat, the cautious one, his shoulders tense, eyes flickering with nervousness. "This place is incredible," Dao exclaimed, snapping a picture of a massive, moss-covered tree. "I've never seen greenery like this." Mia grinned. "Told you it was worth the hike. Just wait until we reach the waterfall." Pat rolled his eyes. "If we even find it, these trails are barely marked. We could be going in circles." Nat's voice was low. "Maybe we should head back before dark. This forest gives me the creeps," Mia scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. It's just a forest. What's there to be scared of?" Dao's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Actually, locals say this area is haunted. They call it the Whispering Forest. They believe that spirits guard the ancient trees, and strange lights appear to guide lost souls." Pat snorted. "Ghost stories. Every place has them. Just superstitions to scare tourists." Ned shivered, glancing over his shoulder. "Still, maybe we shouldn't make fun of them." Mia waved a hand dismissively. "Relax, it's just folklore. Besides, we've got flashlights, a map, and each other. Nothing's going to happen." But as they continued deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, the cicadas' song fading into an eerie silence. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of their vision, twisting and shifting among the ancient trees. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, a faint glow appeared in the distance, a soft, bluish light flickering between the branches. It floated gracefully, moving slowly, almost as if it were alive. Dao gasped, lowering her camera. "Do you see that?" Pat's eyes narrowed. "Probably just fireflies or someone with a flashlight." Mia's voice was filled with curiosity. "Let's check it out." "It's not far." Nat's face went pale. "I don't think that's a good idea." Mia laughed. "Oh, come on, scaredy cat. It's just a light. What's the worst that could happen?" Ignoring Nat's protests, they followed the glowing orb as it drifted deeper into the forest. It danced playfully, weaving between the trees, always just out of reach. But as they pursued it, the path grew narrower, the trees pressing closer, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The air grew colder still, a chill that seeped into their bones. The light flickered, fading momentarily before reappearing further ahead. Dao raised her camera, snapping a photo, her eyes widening as she checked the screen. There's no light in the picture," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just shadows." Pat frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's right there," but as they looked up, the light had vanished, leaving them in near darkness. The trees loomed ominously, their twisted trunks forming sinister shapes. The air was deathly silent. Mia's voice wavered. "Okay, that was weird. Maybe we should head back." Nat's voice was shaky. "I told you this place was wrong." Suddenly, the light reappeared, closer this time, its glow more intense, casting long shadows across the forest floor. It hovered in the air, pulsing rhythmically, almost as if it were watching them. A cold breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it a faint whisper, soft, unintelligible, but unmistakably human. It echoed around them, the voices overlapping, weaving together in a haunting melody. Mia's face went pale. Did you hear that?" Pat's bravado faltered. "It's just the wind, right?" But the whispers grew louder, the words becoming clearer, repeating the same phrase over and over, a mournful chant that sent chills down their spines. "Turn back, turn back, turn back." The light flickered again, its glow intensifying, the shadows stretching across the ground, forming strange, distorted shapes. Dao's voice was trembling. We need to leave, now." But as they turned to retrace their steps, they realized the path was gone, swallowed by the trees. The forest loomed around them, twisting, shifting, the ancient trunks forming a labyrinth of darkness. Nat's voice cracked. "Where's the trail?" We just came from there." Mia's hands were shaking. This doesn't make any sense." The light floated closer, its glow revealing faces within the shadows pale, hollow-eyed apparitions watching them, their mouths moving soundlessly, echoing the haunting chant. "Turn back, turn back, turn back." The ground beneath them grew cold, the earth hardening, roots twisting up like skeletal fingers, wrapping around their feet. The air grew heavy, pressing down on their chests, making it hard to breathe. Pat's voice was hoarse. We were not alone. The light pulsed, the whispers rising to a crescendo, the faces in the shadows growing clearer, their hollow eyes locked on the group, their mouths stretching into mournful, twisted smiles. Mia's eyes were wide with fear. This can't be real. But the faces were real. The light was real. The whispers were real. And they were trapped. The cold air wrapped around them like icy tendrils, and the forest seemed to close in tighter with every passing second. The flickering light hovered ominously, its bluish glow reflecting off hollow eyes staring from the shadows. Mia's voice broke the heavy silence. We need to keep moving. Standing here isn't going to help. Pat gritted his teeth. Which way? The path is gone. How is that even possible? Dao's face was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her camera. This place, it's changing. The trees, they're not where they were before. Nat's voice wavered. It's like they're alive watching us. Mia took a deep breath, forcing herself to sound confident. We just need to find the river. If we follow the water, it'll lead us out. But as they moved, the whispers followed, faint at first, echoing from the shadows, but growing louder, wrapping around them like a ghostly choir. Turn back, turn back, turn back. The words were mournful, pleading, spoken in voices that were not human. They overlapped, weaving into an eerie melody that made the air vibrate with cold dread. Pat's face was tight with fear. Who's saying that? Who's out there? His voice echoed back, swallowed by the darkness. No answer came, only the haunting chant repeating over and over. They pressed on, the light drifting just ahead, its glow casting elongated shadows that danced on the ground. The faces watched them, mouths moving silently, their hollow eyes reflecting the bluish light. Nat stumbled, catching himself on a twisted root. This is wrong, it's all wrong, we need to go back. Mia shook her head, her jaw clenched. There is no back, just forward. We keep moving until we find a way out. Dao glanced at her camera, the screen flickering erratically. It's not working. Every photo I take, it's just shadows. No light, no faces, just darkness. Pat's voice trembled. We're not supposed to be here. We never should have followed that light. Mia's frustration boiled over. It's just a stupid light. There has to be an explanation. Maybe it's some kind of trick or... A rustling sound interrupted her. It came from behind, followed by another, closer this time. Leaves crunched, twigs snapped, as if something or someone was moving through the undergrowth. They spun around, flashlights slicing through the darkness, revealing nothing but trees and shadows. Yet, the air felt heavy, charged with an invisible presence. Pat's voice was barely above a whisper. We're not alone. The rustling grew louder, coming from all directions, encircling them. Shadows danced, shifting unnaturally, forming shapes that seemed to move on their own. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. The words twisted, overlapping, forming a new phrase, more urgent, more chilling. You shouldn't have come, you shouldn't have followed. Nat's face drained of color. They know we're here, they don't want us here. Mia's bravado crumbled. Who are they? The shadows moved, swirling together, forming a shape, a figure with hollow eyes and a mouth that stretched impossibly wide, its body twisted and elongated, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. It stood there, just beyond the reach of their flashlights, watching them with a malevolent curiosity. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out, only the whispers echoing around them. Dao's scream shattered the silence. Run, run. They bolted, branches slapping against their faces, roots grabbing at their ankles. The forest seemed to shift, the trees bending, closing in, the shadows chasing them, the figure gliding effortlessly behind. The light reappeared, floating just ahead, its glow flickering, beckoning them forward. Mia's voice was ragged, breathless. Follow the light, it's our only chance. Pat yelled, Are you crazy? It's what got us into this mess, but there was no other choice. The shadows were closing in, the whispers growing deafening, the ghostly figure drifting closer, its hollow eyes fixed on them. They ran toward the light, its glow growing brighter, illuminating a narrow path that twisted through the ancient trees. The faces in the shadows watched them pass, their mouths moving silently, the mournful chant echoing. You shouldn't have followed, you shouldn't have come. They burst into a small clearing, the light floating above, its glow illuminating the dense fog that clung to the ground. It hovered there, waiting, watching. Mia gasped for air, doubling over. What does it want? Why is it toying with us? Dao's eyes were wide with terror. It's not guiding us out, it's leading us deeper. Pat's face twisted with realization. It was never trying to help, it's been trapping us from the start. The light pulsed, its glow growing brighter, almost blinding. The fog swirled around them, cold and damp, the whispers echoing louder than ever. Nat's voice was hollow. We can't leave, we're trapped. The shadows moved, forming a circle around the clearing, their faces stretching into ghastly smiles. The ghostly figure stood just beyond the light's reach, its hollow eyes glowing, its mouth opening wide. A voice echoed from the darkness, ancient and mournful. It was not a whisper, but a declaration, final and absolute. You belong to the forest now, just like the others. The light flickered, the shadows closing in, the fog thickening, the ghostly faces watching, their smiles widening. And then the light vanished, plunging them into darkness. The darkness was suffocating, a void that swallowed every sound except the frantic beating of their hearts. Their flashlights flickered, the batteries weakening, their beams barely piercing the thick fog that clung to the ground like ghostly tendrils. Mia's voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. Where did it go? Where did the light go? Pat's eyes darted around, his breaths coming in sharp gasps. I don't know, it was right here, it was right here. Dao's hands trembled as she clutched her camera. We need to keep moving, we can't stay here. Nat's voice was hollow, his eyes unfocused. We're never getting out, it's playing with us, it's never going to let us leave. Mia grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. Don't say that, we're getting out. We just have to find the river again. Follow the water, that's the way out. But the forest had changed. The trees were closer, their twisted branches reaching down like skeletal fingers. The path they had followed was gone, swallowed by the shifting shadows. Pat's voice wavered. This place, it's alive, it's moving, it's changing to keep us here. The whispers returned, floating through the air, winding around them like an invisible fog. They were closer now, louder, each voice overlapping, weaving a haunting melody that made the air vibrate. Lost, lost, lost. The word echoed, bouncing off the trees, circling them. The voices were mournful, hollow, filled with an ancient sorrow. Dao's eyes were wide with terror. It's trying to confuse us, to make us lose our way. Nat's flashlight flickered again, its beam cutting through the fog, illuminating a shape in the distance. A figure stood just beyond the shadows, watching them with hollow eyes, its body elongated and twisted, its limbs bent at unnatural angles. It didn't move, it didn't breathe, it simply watched, its face stretching into a wide, unnatural smile. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. What is that? Pat's body went rigid. It's the same thing I saw when we first followed the light. The figure's mouth moved, its voice echoing through the fog, layered and distorted, as if spoken by many voices at once. You followed, you came, now you belong. The shadows shifted, faces emerging from the darkness. Hollow eyes, gaping mouths, their faces contorted in agony, their bodies twisted and broken, limbs bending at impossible angles. They stared, their faces reflecting the bluish glow of the light, their mouths moving soundlessly, the whispers growing louder. Lost, forever lost, Gao's voice trembled. They were like us, they followed the light, and now they're trapped. Mia's stomach churned. No, we're getting out. We're not staying here. She grabbed Pat's arm. Come on, move. They ran, stumbling through the fog, their flashlights flickering, the shadows shifting around them. The faces followed, drifting between the trees, their hollow eyes glowing, their mouths whispering. The forest seemed to twist, the trees bending, the path curving in on itself. No matter which direction they ran, the clearing was always there, waiting, the fog swirling around it like a living thing. Nat's voice broke, panic setting in. We're going in circles, it's not letting us leave. Mia's mind raced. There has to be a way out, there has to be. Think. Dao's camera flickered, the screen glitching, showing static before revealing a face, a twisted, hollow-eyed figure staring directly into the lens, its mouth wide open, as if screaming. She dropped the camera with a scream. No, it's in the camera, it's watching us. The whispers grew louder, echoing around them, the voices becoming frantic, pleading. Go back. Pat's voice broke. What do they want? Why won't they leave us alone? The light appeared again, flickering just beyond the trees, its bluish glow illuminating the ghostly faces, their eyes hollow, their mouths moving soundlessly. It drifted forward, weaving between the trees, its glow growing brighter, casting long shadows that danced on the ground. Mia's chest tightened. It's leading us somewhere it wants us to follow. Nat shook his head, his face pale. No, we can't follow it, it's a trap, it's how it keeps us here. But the light pulsed, its glow hypnotic, the whispers growing louder, more desperate. Come. Pat's eyes were glassy, his body moving on its own. I have to follow ... I have to. Mia grabbed his arm, shaking him. No, don't listen, it's trying to take you. The light flickered, the whispers growing frantic, echoing through the fog. Join us. The ghostly faces circled them, their mouths stretching into wide, and natural smiles, their hollow eyes fixed on them, unblinking. Dao's voice trembled. It wants us to be like them, to stay forever. The shadows moved, the trees bending, the fog thickening, the light growing brighter, its glow blinding. Mia's heart pounded. We can't stay here, we have to keep moving, we have to find a way out. Pat's face twisted with fear. But where? Every path leads back, it's like we're in a maze. Mia's eyes locked on the light, her jaw tightening. Then we break the rules, we stop following the path, we make our own way out. She turned, her flashlight beam cutting through the fog, illuminating a narrow gap between the trees. This way, hurry. They ran, the whispers echoing behind them, the faces watching, the light flickering, its glow growing dimmer, its hold weakening. The shadows stretched, the fog swirling, the ghostly figures drifting closer, their arms reaching out, fingers elongated, grasping, pulling. But Mia didn't look back. She ran, her lungs burning, her heart pounding, her mind focused on one thing, escaping the forest's grip. As they broke through the trees, the light flickered one last time, its glow fading, the whispers echoing, a final, mournful plea. Don't leave, stay with us. The forest groaned, the shadows shivering, the faces watching as the light vanished, leaving only darkness behind. They stumbled into a clearing, the air cold and still, the fog lifting, the trees standing silent and motionless. But the feeling lingered, the weight of countless eyes watching from the shadows, waiting, whispering. They had escaped, but the forest wasn't done with them yet. The clearing was cold, unnaturally silent. The air felt heavy, thick with the residue of ancient whispers. The fog was gone, yet the eerie sensation of being watched remained, crawling under their skin like icy fingers. Mia's breaths were ragged, her body trembling as she scanned the darkness. We made it out. Nat collapsed to his knees, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. Are we really out? Pat looked back at the dense wall of trees they had burst through, their twisted branches now motionless, shadows lingering just beyond the line of sight. I don't see the light, it's gone. Dao hugged herself tightly, shivering. But I still feel it, it's like it's watching. The group fell silent, eyes fixed on the forest, waiting, expecting the light to appear again, to chase them back into the maze of shadows. But nothing moved. The clearing was deathly still, the night air cold against their skin. Mia took a shaky breath. We have to keep going, we need to find the river. That's our way out. The others nodded, their faces pale and haunted. They followed Mia as she led them away from the clearing, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The path was narrow, overgrown with vines and roots that snaked across the ground. The trees here were different, told her, their bark rough and scarred, their branches twisted into claw-like shapes. The air grew colder, their breaths visible in the moonlight, curling like smoke. Nat's voice was a shaky whisper. This doesn't feel right, it's like we're being watched. Pat's eyes darted around, his body tense. It's just nerves, we're out. We just need to get to the river. But the feeling of being followed persisted, a weight pressing down on them, a cold presence that clung to the shadows. Dao's camera, still hanging around her neck, flickered back to life. The screen glowed faintly, static dancing across it before showing an image blurry, distorted, but unmistakable. A face, twisted and hollow-eyed, staring out from the darkness, its mouth stretched into a wide, unnatural grin. Dao choked back a scream, stumbling back, dropping the camera. No, it's still here. The camera's screen flickered, the face's mouth moving soundlessly, its eyes unblinking, fixed on them. Mia's heart skipped a beat. We have to go now. They broke into a run, branches scratching at their skin, roots tripping their steps, the cold air burning their lungs. The forest seemed to close in, the trees leaning closer, the shadows growing darker, deeper. And then they heard a faint, melodic hum, echoing through the trees, a familiar, haunting tune that sent chills down their spines. The light appeared again, flickering just ahead, its bluish glow illuminating the twisted trees, casting long, distorted shadows. It moved slowly, weaving between the branches, its glow pulsing rhythmically, like the beat of a heart. Mia's voice was raw with fear. No, no, we left it behind, we left it behind. The light flickered, the melody growing louder, a hypnotic lullaby that wrapped around them, pulling them closer. The whispers returned, drifting through the air, echoing between the trees. Stay, stay, stay. Pat's face went pale, his body moving on its own, his eyes locked on the light. I can't stop. Dao screamed, grabbing his arm. No, don't follow it. It's a trap. It's how it keeps us here. The light pulsed, its glow intensifying, the whispers growing more frantic. Come back, come back, come back. Mia's head throbbed, the melody digging into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts, pulling her towards the light. Her vision blurred, the forest spinning, the ground shifting beneath her feet. She felt herself moving forward, her body no longer under her control. Nat's voice cut through the fog. Don't listen, don't look at it. He grabbed Mia's hand, pulling her back, breaking the light's hold. We have to fight it, we have to get out. The light flickered, its glow dimming, the whispers becoming angry, distorted. The ghostly faces emerged from the shadows, their eyes hollow, their mouths open wide, screaming soundlessly. They reached out, their elongated fingers stretching, grasping, pulling. Their mouths moved, their faces twisted in agony, their hollow eyes locked on the group. Mia's chest tightened. We have to break the connection, we have to destroy it. Dao's eyes widened. The camera, it's how it sees us, it's using the camera. She grabbed the camera, its screen still glowing, the face staring out, its mouth moving, whispering. Without hesitation, she smashed it against a rock, the screen shattering, the light within flickering before extinguishing. The forest groaned, the ground shaking, the faces distorting, their forms breaking apart, dissolving into shadows. The light pulsed once more, its glow faltering, the whispers echoing one last time. No, don't leave, don't forget. The glow vanished, the forest falling silent, the air growing warm, the shadows retreating. The river's sound echoed nearby, the water rushing, steady and real. They stumbled towards it, their bodies weak, their minds numb. The river glistened under the moonlight, a path leading out of the cursed forest. Mia looked back one last time, her heart heavy. The trees stood still, their twisted branches no longer moving, the shadows gone. But the feeling remained, the cold presence lingering, the echo of whispers drifting through the air. Dao shivered. It had let us go. Pat's voice was hollow, or it chose to stay hidden. Nat's eyes were distant, his face pale. We walked out, but a part of us stayed behind. They crossed the river, their bodies exhausted, their minds haunted by the memory of the light, the faces, the whispers. And deep within the forest, the light flickered once more, the melody playing softly, waiting, watching, for the next travelers to follow its glow.
If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Mystical Tales, so you won't miss out on more eerie and thrilling tales in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.